Okay, then let's start. I hope that you are energized after the coffee break. Uh, we've left enough time, so we go straight away. My subject for today is From Vision to Reality, Project Management in Multi-Brand Platform with 140 plus websites. And today I will explain how we have built such a platform and some practical key takeaways that you can bring home to your teams. What exactly you will learn today is how we actually built such a platform, the different phases in the development, some challenges, real world challenges that we have faced in our journey. And our journey took so far 4 years and it still continues. And how to balance governance models, customization, and performance. Of course, what you will not learn today is a complete guide on project management. So before we start, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mikhail Shumelov. I'm a project manager for 10 years now. In the last 4 years, I have extensive experience in building digital experience platforms, mainly based on Drupal. I'm also a founder of PM Mentality. That's a mentorship program for project managers in my country, Bulgaria. Hopefully, we go international. I possess multiple certifications, but I believe that it's about practical experience, not about the certifications. And in my free time, I enjoy sports and I love outdoor activities. But in the past year, I don't have enough free time as I have a 1-year-old daughter. So, so I also work at Jakarta, and formerly known as FFW. We have active projects in more than 30 countries now, and we are presented globally. But of course, if you are interested, don't hesitate and come to say hi at booth number 1. And if you are interested in connecting with me, you can scan that QR code and yeah, connect with me, of course. So I'll give you 27 seconds to scan the QR code. And in the meantime, I would like to ask how many people of you are actually working as a project managers, project coordinators, or delivery leads? Nice. So I hope that you find this session practical. My goal is to guide you through what we have experienced, what we have faced, and how we tackled everything from a project management perspective. So let's dive in. Before jumping into the actual challenges, first I want to give you some overview and context about our projects, so you understand better most of the examples. So our client actually is Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain is one of the largest building materials company in Europe and in the world. It is presented in 75 countries globally. It was founded in 1665 in France. It is well known for their innovation and sustainability approach of the things. And currently more than 160,000 people actually work at Saint-Gobain. So it's a massive organization. I'm pretty sure you have heard at least of some of the sub-brands from Saint-Gobain, and they are presented in your countries like Weber, Regips, and so on, Isover. There is some historical connection between Saint-Gobain and Drupal, and here you can see some numbers, I think quite impressive. And in essence, Drupal is the standard solution for building complex websites in Saint-Gobain. The project goals, what we actually did, as you noticed from the title, it's a multi-brand platform, but essentially it was a platform which allows the marketing teams to manage multiple websites at once from multiple brands, which essentially get rid of the complex or not so legacy systems, legacy content management system like Sitecore, some custom CMSs, and even Drupal 7 websites. Of course, this aimed to reduce the maintenance and to boost efficiency in terms of reusability of the features and so on. One goal of the project at the beginning, of course, is to accelerate the time to market, reduce the lead time as much as possible, and reduce the total cost of ownership, and ensure long-term sustainability. Once again, this is just for you to gather some context on the project before we dive into the actual challenges that we faced. At the end, all those goals that you saw in the previous slide were achieved. And here you can see the services and the technologies that we have used along the way. Like, of course, the main technology, as I said, is Drupal, but we also did many third-party integrations with digital asset management, with product information management, and so on. But we are here to talk about the project management perspective of the things. And I'm about to present you the key phases that we went through, along with the key challenges that we faced and how we actually resolved those challenges from project management standpoint. It's fair to say that we can divide the project into three main major phases. The discovery part, where we try to understand the client's vision, what we need to achieve, understand their pain points, their problem. The actual development, where we have built the core platform and the minimal viable product, essentially. And the third phase, scaling and maintenance, where we continued upscaling the platform, working on evolutions, but at the same time, we already had websites live and we had to maintain it. So let's dive into the discovery. For us, it was really important to kick off the discovery with the right mindset. And for us, the right mindset was about understanding the problem rather than thinking about a solution first in terms of technology. So I allowed myself to include this quote here from a book that I love, Inspired by Marty Kagan, which I highly recommend. And it sounds like this: product discovery isn't about finding the right solution, it's about understanding the right problem. I hope you all can agree. How many of you actually have participated in discovery sessions? So perhaps you can agree that most of the projects, if they go wrong down the road, they go wrong because of wrongly executed discovery sessions. So basically, that's one of the key phases in any project. So for us, as I said, it was important to kick it off with the right mindset. And now I will start listing the challenges that we have faced. And of course, the first one, a key element of any discovery session, is understanding the business requirement and outlining the scope. For us, it all starts with a vision. It all starts with understanding where we need to be, what's the problem we need to cover, what the problem we need to solve, and how. So we first started with defining who will use the platform and how it will use it. So we outlined several user journeys based on the different users, and essentially we did use the user story mapping approach. There is another great book on it by Jeff Payton called User Story Mapping, which you can read more about that topic. But essentially, that really helped us visualize what the clients would like to achieve. Most of us were visual peoples, and the things make much more sense when we see them in a diagram or in just a path. So that was the first thing. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. Here we talk about having 2, even 3 weeks of workshops, whole day workshops with the clients, so we can understand the different users, how they will interact with such a platform, and so on. And this can help us understand the scope, but in order to prevent any misalignments, at the end, we created a broad scope document, which later on we split into user stories and so on. But that's how we managed to deal with the scope definition at the beginning during the discovery phase. Then the stakeholders alignment. As you can sense in such a massive organization like Saint-Gobain, there are many stakeholders involved. So first, we started with, of course, understanding who is who by having an organizational diagram and agreeing on a simple so-called RICI matrix dealing with who should be responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed about certain phases of the project. So we can align on the expectation. But one key thing that we did during that phase, similar to the Scrum framework, where we have a product owner who is a representative of all business requirements, we tried to centralize the things by having one person from our client, or in our case, it was a team of 3 people because the project is huge, which basically summarized the main wishes and desires from a client standpoint. So central PO, in ideal world, one person, is key to streamlining the communication and to align with your stakeholders based on what we have experienced. Then prioritization. Obviously, at the beginning, most of the clients that I have worked with want to build more that we can fit into, let's say, the MVP version. So that MVP version actually helped us to outline what's the minimalistic version of our product, so we can go live and gather early user feedback as soon as possible. Obviously, there were many important features, many fancy features that we all wanted to include at the very beginning. But at the same time, it's all about prioritizing value, trying to iterate as soon and as much as possible, and obtain that user's feedback, that direct user's feedback, as soon as possible. So in terms of the prioritization, the minimal viable product concept helped us big time here. But of course, we didn't ignore all the rest of great requirements, ideas, and so on. So we kind of roadmapped them for the future so that we can come back to them, talk about them again, prioritize them or delay them depending on the business requirements and the whole environment of that moment. And in terms of the prioritization, it's not rocket science here, of course, but it's still useful. I believe that the Moscow framework help us here big time, outlining what's a must-have, what's a should-have, could-have, and won't-have. Are you familiar, I guess, with such a concept about prioritization? Okay, so I hope that that's one of the things that you can try with your teams, and when there are too many requirements and we are conscious of time, as it's the case in most of the development teams I have worked with. Then, estimation accuracy. That's something that we are still facing, to be honest, and we will continue facing maybe till the rest of my life, because as we know, software development, it's unpredictable. We might have crystal balls, but they are not working as we want to be. So for the estimation accuracy, we highly rely on our knowledge so far, the so-called empiricism, and we kind of compare with our similar experiences. At Jakawa, we have built several website factories, like the one from Saint-Gobain. Of course, each of them is unique, but we have some understanding how things should be done. So we relied on the historical data, but we still can deal with such a massive amount of uncertainty because of the scale of that project. So we implemented the so-called rolling wave planning. That's a concept where we put an estimate upfront, which usually is higher because of the amount of uncertainty, and we revalidate once we know more. In such case, we kind of share the risk between us and the clients, but we bring the needed level of transparency, of openness about potential issues that we can face and about laying the foundation of a great relationship between the agency and the client, which is really important, I guess, at the beginning of the project, especially. Next, the dependencies. As I said, we had to deal off with many legacy platforms and to get rid of them. But we were limited with the time. So what we did is to analyze the core functionalities of those platforms to see what we need to focus on. And of course, we didn't have to replicate everything. We wanted to be a bit innovative and to meet the new business requirements, not to rebuild the very same systems. So in terms of the dependencies, we analyzed the core functionalities of the platform, but we also did a dependency mapping. Again, trying to visualize what can go wrong, what is interconnected in terms of features, in terms of integrations, and try to anticipate the problems. Of course, final thing was to plan in phases, and we kind of tried to break down each complex integration into smaller pieces so we can fit each of those smaller pieces in one iteration. I'll talk a bit later about the incremental approach of development. Last challenge from the ones that I have outlined, I want to reassure you that this was not just 6 challenges that we faced in the discovery, but those are just top 6 in my opinion, is the uncertainty. As I mentioned it several times. So we try to be a bit proactive here, create a risk walk, create a risk strategy, how we can act once we face a risk. And the risk walk helped us because we were more prepared later on down the road when we faced some of the risks, because some of the risks were clear for us at the very beginning, right? And of course, we admitted that there are some deviations from the plan that will occur later on, and we cannot predict everything. That's why it's recommended to work in an agile way in software development, and I wouldn't say old-fashioned, but the old way, waterfalling projects, is just not working for us. So we kicked off the development with the continuous discovery mindset. We knew that business requirement will change, and we wanted to prevent negotiating the scope with the client. We wanted to fully embrace the agile mindset of being open for change rather than following a plan. That was key for us in order not just to be a vendor in the client's development, but to be a partner. That's, for me, essential part of being responsive to change. So how we did this? We tried to facilitate UAT testing, client testing, the early development as soon as possible. For the known scope, we tried to list the acceptance criteria and to have clear definition of done, so it can help us. But in many cases, the business requirement change over time, as you can imagine, because the development took more than 2 years, the whole development. So some of the business requirement change completely until we get to develop them. Next, complex integrations that I mentioned earlier. We broke this down into smaller pieces, and ideally we wanted to fit an integration within one iteration. In our case, sprint, as we were taking advantage of the sprint framework as of that moment. That was key part, and another part is working closely with the QA department to facilitate early integration testing. That's really important, and I think we have a great colleague from Jakarta as well here who will talk about how to catch all the bugs and not allow them on production later on. Then, being part of a multi-brand platform has lots of risks in terms of what should be a custom feature and what should be a feature for the whole platform. So here the customization versus the consistency kicked in, and we really needed to outline business rules that are visible for everyone. For example, if there is a feature requested by certain country, but the rest of the websites didn't want that feature at the time, it should be developed as an option so that it doesn't impact the rest of the countries. But of course, all these custom features had to be developed with the reusability in mind. So here we had to create detailed documentation. And one practical thing that I can mention here about documentation is that before putting all our effort in building any documentation, we should ask ourselves, who is the documentation for? I mean, who will use that documentation? Is it a user guide? Is it for our tech teams? Is it just for onboarding? So that we don't waste resources, time, effort on building unuseful documentation, which maybe nobody will use. Then, minimizing waste. That's a lean concept way before Agile, which I'm sure you hear a lot. But when it comes the development phase, we need to think how we can deal with it. I mentioned that we fully utilize the Scrum framework at the beginning, and this is exactly how we take full advantage of the Scrum framework. Iterative development in incremental delivery. What does it mean? Iteration essentially is our sprint, and the goal here is to try to improve over time and as much as possible. So there are those sprints into the development where we have the lessons learned eventually translated into action points, which the team ideally implement into the next sprint. So there is iteration after iteration, which helps us improve over time. And that's the essence of iterative development. And about incremental delivery, that's the goal of us having a working software at the end of each sprint. As per the Scrum guide, it's a potentially shippable product. That's how it's in the books. But as we all know, it's not always by the book. Focus. That's a challenge, especially in such a long-term development that we had to deal with. How to keep the team focused. And now, in my eyes, it's pretty simple. It wasn't back in the days, but it's about putting more effort into forming the sprint goal. Usually, there is a product owner coming from business side who come up with the requirements and say it okay and say that's the sprint goal. And that's how most of the Scrum teams actually work. But we wanted to be one step ahead of the curve. So every time our product owner came up with the business objective, we organized workshops and ensured that the sprint goal is a team effort, because at the end of the day, it's the team who, who do the job, and we should be all aligned on what's possible, what's not possible, to have, as I said, working software at the end of the sprint. And lastly, motivation. Again, it's very easy to lose focus or motivation in such a long-term development. So there are some tactics that I have used when I was on top of the team, to ensure that the team understands that we're part of something big, to understand that we're part of something great, and we are building a impressive digital product. So we reiterated the vision, what we are aiming for, what we ideally we would like to achieve, so that everybody feels important in that whole journey. Then it's about, of course, safe environment. And I know that this sounds a bit of a cliche, but it's about ensuring everybody in the team feels heard and feels good enough to put all his or her efforts into achieving our goal. So here we talk about team spirit. That's what I mean by safe environment. And then celebrate milestones. Yes, we all aim to, in that phase, launch the MVP version, to have the platform, to have our first websites live, but at the same time, it's important to celebrate even the smaller wins. So we try to keep the team spirit and motivation by throwing some mini parties, by celebrating the small milestones, and so that the team feel motivated. I think that actually helped a lot. Okay, so we are ready to go into the third phase that we have outlined earlier before. This is when we already had websites live, but at the same time, there were more requirements and more change requests and evolutions to develop in order to upscale the platform. So that's why the phase is called scaling and maintenance. So let's go with the challenges. The first one was how we can actually balance those things. We didn't know how much time is needed to maintain the first websites live. We didn't know, we didn't have any historical data. So how can we do it? We simply start measuring. We started measuring so we can improve our planning, so we can plan the needed capacity of the team in order to be flexible to address the pressing maintenance requirements as fast as possible. At the same time, we wanted to develop those new features, but they were a lot, and where we should start from. So we again needed to prioritize, of course, with the help of our clients, and to understand what's important, what's the first thing that we should start with. So there were multiple workshops involving even not just the central team, but many of the business units, also allowing them to vote on certain functionalities, because essentially those were our early adopters. So for us, it was really important to gather the feedback from the early adopters and to know which features we should focus on in order to truly upscale the platform. And at the end, it was about visibility, visibility for everyone, visibility for the business units, and visibility for the development teams. So we kind of streamlined the communication here by using a release calendar and planned regular releases. The second challenge that we faced is related to the first one, and it's about the maintenance and the unplanned work. I said that we start measuring and we that which help us to dedicate certain amount of the team's capacity to deal with that maintenance. Yes, that's great, but still there is some unplanned work that has to be done. And to be honest, this is the time where we start challenging our processes, challenging and questioning whether Agile and Scrum is good enough for us. And the answer was no, it wasn't. So we decided that we no longer need to use Scrum because Scrum is a push framework. You push work from the product backlog into the Scrum backlog, and until that work is finished, you are not supposed to put additional work. Or in the rare cases, if you're putting additional work, there should be a trade-off. One in, one out, right? And this was not working for us anymore because of the unplanned work. We had to maintain several websites, and even that at first it was manageable, after several months it wasn't. So we switched to the Kanban framework, which essentially is a pull system. You pull work when the previous work item is done. And that worked pretty good for us, allowing us to be flexible to address unplanned work pretty fast so that it doesn't impact our relationship with the client or the stability of the websites. Yeah. Performance stability, part of the maintenance, which is a really important topic. But the first challenge that we faced here was to define performance, to align on the KPIs, because very often we have different understanding of what good performance mean. I mean, the KPIs that we use to measure, they might differ. And when they differ, there will be misalignment, miscommunication down the road. We wanted to kill that at the very beginning. So the first step that we did here was to align on the KPIs, what's important for us. For us, it was to review everything and to be completely transparent. For us, what was important was the response time for the transactions. We monitored this in New Relic, and we also monitored several KPIs from Google Lighthouse. Of course, then once we aligned on the KPIs, we wanted to draft a long-term plan. So we did the performance audit, then a cost-benefit analysis that help us identify quick wins and basically to measure impact versus the effort needed. And then we proceeded with executing that plan, ensuring constant visibility on the progress and building up the so-called interactive boards where we can measure the performance real time. Multi-brand platform. I think you ask yourself, did I see this in the development phase? Yes, you did, but it still remains a challenge for us because continuing upscaling the platform, we still had to stick to the governance model. We still had to stick to the business rules available at the first place. And we still had to maintain that flexible and scalable architecture. So we continued spending lots of effort on documentation. But one thing that we introduced during that phase, and when I talk about governance model, this is a dedicated workshops for discussing the features requested by custom websites, whether they should be a platform-wide features or not, whether there is a benefit of us having a feature for all the countries, all the websites, or there is no point to put our effort and resources on that. As I said in the beginning, one of the goals of the project was to reduce the total cost of ownership, and that reusability was key part of this journey. Technical debt. Another challenge that I'm sure we are all facing is, in my opinion, some of us is just not admitting that. So, so the first thing is that we simply admitted that it's happening, it's there, we need to track it. By technical debt, I don't mean just the consequence of us prioritizing speed over quality. I mean also technology and the fast evolvement of that technology. And sooner or later, we might realize that the decisions that we have taken 2-3 years in the past might not have been the best ones. Yeah, so as I said, we admitted it and started tackling it gradually. Here I have written 10% per iteration. Of course, that's just for the presentation. It vary more often or not. It really depends on the circumstances, but ideally that's the percentage based on the best practices that we need to separate in order to be on top of that negative curve. And another thing was refactoring our ideas, our solutions. So here we wanted just to capture all good ideas for the talent that we have in the teams. We had really experienced developers. Of course, some of us are no longer part of the team, but that's life, who had brilliant ideas. And we wanted to ensure that those ideas are captured and sooner or later tackled. So we created kind of a walk where we listed all the ideas, and some of them we implemented, some of them are planned, some of them we ignored, but at least this is how we ensure that it's all captured. And lastly is the security and compliance challenge. Security is maybe really hot topic in many organizations. Many organizations are really sensitive on this topic. So of course at Jakawa, we take this seriously, and we conducted security audits. We try to be fully transparent when there is a patch that we need to apply and so on. And we try to have a plan based on the criticality of the security patch that we need to do, to have a clear plan how it will be executed when it will be deployed to production. And we wanted, and we are fully transparent on this. Good enough. In conclusion, if I need to summarize everything in one slide, these are the proven strategies that we need to implement when building complex digital solutions. Align stakeholders, communicate with them regularly, try to break the projects into phases, manage the risk proactively, stay agile, and by agile I mean flexible, responding to change, implement governance models, focus on continuous improvement and motivating your team, prioritize value, and foster team collaboration. And at the end, what we should reiterate to ourselves and to the teams that we work with is that the best products are never finished. Here I have included another great quote from inspired by Teresa Torres on continuous discovery habits. I think it's really inspiring as well. And lastly, I just want to remind you not to miss the contribution opportunities if you have a chance to contribute to our wonderful community. Thank you.
You have one question. We try and read it out. Got a few minutes left. From Pierre. As this project was likely a multi-year exercise, how to balance speed and quality to bring all the sites on the new platform versus the cost of maintaining two environments, legacy one and the new one?
That's a great question. Basically, I would say there is no silver bullet. We definitely need to take this and to discuss it openly with our clients. So I don't think there is a straightaway solution that I can answer to that question. So it really depends. My advice here would be open, talk with your clients, and see how this can be balanced based on what you have in terms of resources.
There's no more questions.
Great.
Unless there's some in the room. We've got 2 minutes.
Any other questions? Don't worry, we can catch up after that presentation as well. All right then. Thanks a lot for being here.